Okay, let's go. Number 1. Troy. Close your eyes. Picture a dusty library shelf. You pull down a leather-bound copy of Homer's Iliad. Achilles. Hector, the Trojan horse. 1,000 ships launch for Helen's face. Beautiful poetry. Ancient mythology. Pure fiction. Now open your eyes because everything you just imagined is wrong. In 1870, a German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann stood on a barren hill in northwestern Turkey, convinced the academics were lying. They said Troy never existed. They said Homer made it up. Epic poetry, not history. Schliemann disagreed. He brought dynamite. He blasted through the hill at Hisarlik, and he found walls, massive defensive walls, stone foundations, burnt layers, gold treasure. A city destroyed by fire exactly as Homer described. The scholars were wrong. Troy was real. But here's what makes it impossible. Troy wasn't just one city. It was 9 cities, stacked on top of each other like a geological layer cake. Troy I, built around 3000 BCE. Troy II, destroyed by fire. Troy III through V, rebuilt and destroyed again. Troy VI, a Bronze Age superpower with walls 16 feet thick. Troy VII, the one that matches Homer's timeline, destroyed around 1180 BCE. Troy VIII and the 9th, Greek and Roman settlements built on the ruins of legend. For 3,000 years, humans kept rebuilding on the same spot, each time burying the previous city under rubble and forgetting it ever existed. By the time Homer sang his songs around 750 BCE, Troy VI and the 7th were already ancient history, buried under 30 feet of earth and debris. The Trojan War wasn't mythology, it was archaeology. Mainstream historians dismissed Homer because they couldn't imagine oral tradition preserving accurate details for 400 years. But the stones don't lie. The burnt layers, the arrowheads, the skeletal remains all confirm a city under siege, destruction by fire, Homer recording history. So if Troy was real, what else did we bury and call myth? What other cities vanished so completely that we turned them into bedtime stories? How many are still out there waiting under hills we haven't bothered to excavate? And why did we ever think ancient poets were making it all up? From a city unearthed on a Turkish hilltop, we descend into the depths of the Mediterranean. Number 2. Thonis clan. You're 75 feet underwater in the Mediterranean, off the coast of Egypt. The water is cold. Visibility is maybe 10 feet. Your dive light cuts through the murky blue-green and hits something impossible. A face, 16 feet tall, 5 tons of solid granite, staring back at you from the sand. You swim further. Stone columns, massive anchors, gold coins scattered like confetti, the ruins of temples, houses, harbors, an entire city perfectly preserved beneath the waves. This is Thonis clan. And for 1,200 years, historians thought it was a myth. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote about it in the 5th century BCE. A grand port city at the mouth of the Nile where Hercules and Helen of Troy supposedly visited, where pharaohs crowned themselves in sacred temples, where Mediterranean trade converged. Scholars read his accounts and dismissed them. Herodotus exaggerates. He invents. There's no archaeological evidence. The city never existed. In 2000, French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio was searching for 18th century French warships in Aboukir Bay. His sonar hit something massive. He dove, and he found Herodotus was right. Thonis clan wasn't a legend. It was Egypt's primary port for over 1,000 years, from the 8th century BCE until the founding of Alexandria in 331 BCE. Then, sometime around the 8th century CE, the ground beneath the city liquefied. Earthquakes, rising sea levels, unstable sediment. The entire metropolis sank into the Mediterranean in a matter of decades. Buildings collapsed, temples toppled, the harbor swallowed itself, and the sea buried it all under sand and silt. For 200 years it vanished, completely. No ruins on land, no visible trace. Just ancient texts that no one believed. The preservation is staggering. Gaudio's team has recovered 64 shipwrecks, their wooden hulls still intact. Over 700 anchors, some weighing multiple tons. Gold coins by the thousands. Jewelry, pottery, bronze ritual objects, and the statues. Massive granite statues of pharaohs, gods, and sphinxes. The largest, a representation of Hapi, the god of the Nile's flooding, stands 16 feet tall and weighs 5 tons. It was found lying on its side exactly where it fell when the temple collapsed into the sea. The city covered over 10 square kilometers. Temples dedicated to Amun and Khonsu. A grand canal connecting the city to the Nile. Residential districts, warehouses, docks that once saw ships from Greece, Phoenicia, and Persia. All of it, gone. Swallowed by the sea in a geological blink. Mainstream archaeology explains it as natural disaster. Coastal subsidence, earthquakes predictable, but the speed is haunting. A city that dominated trade for a millennium, erased in decades. No gradual decline. No slow abandonment. Just catastrophic liquefaction and silence. How does an entire economic superpower vanish without anyone recording its destruction? Why did no one rebuild? If this city disappeared so completely that we thought it was fiction, what else is down there? How many drowned metropolises are we missing? And why did we stop believing the ancient historians who were right all along? From plunging into the Mediterranean, we descend even deeper. Not into water, but into the earth itself. Number 3. Derinkuyu. Picture this. It's 1963. You're renovating your basement in Cappadocia, Turkey. You knock down a wall. Behind it, darkness, not a crawl space, a tunnel. You grab a flashlight and step inside. The tunnel keeps going down and down. And down, you've just discovered a city. 18 stories deep. Built to house 20,000 people and their livestock, entirely underground. This is Derinkuyu. And it's not a cave, not a natural formation, not a desperate hole in the ground. It's engineered, carved by hand from volcanic tuff, a soft rock that hardens when exposed to air. The precision is staggering. Ventilation shafts plunge 60 meters straight down, ensuring fresh air reaches every level. Rolling stone doors, weighing up to 1,000 pounds, could seal off entire sections from the inside. Chapels, wineries, stables, storage rooms, schools. A massive underground complex with room for thousands, designed to sustain life for months. The engineering required to carve this without collapsing the structure is beyond what we credit ancient builders with. Tuff is soft enough to carve with bronze tools, but stable enough to support the weight of 18 levels stacked on top of each other. The ventilation system alone is a masterpiece. Fresh air flows from the surface down to the deepest levels through a network of shafts that never intersect, preventing contamination and ensuring circulation. Water wells, dug from the lowest levels, tap into underground aquifers. The entire city is a self-contained survival bunker. Mainstream archaeologists date Derinkuyu to the 8th century BCE, built by the Phrygians to hide from invading armies. Later expanded by early Christians fleeing Roman persecution, a logical explanation. People dig underground to escape danger. Simple. Achievable. But the precision contradicts simple. The ventilation technology, the structural integrity, the sheer scale of coordination required to excavate 18 levels without modern surveying tools. This isn't a desperate refuge. This is sophisticated civil engineering. Derinkuyu isn't alone. Over 200 underground cities have been discovered in Cappadocia, many connected by miles of tunnels. Some researchers argue the deepest levels are far older than the 8th century BCE, possibly dating back to the Hittites or even earlier, to a civilization we haven't identified yet. The rolling stone doors only lock from the inside. Meaning the threat was external. But who were they hiding from? Invading armies don't require 18 stories of underground refuge. You don't carve a city this deep unless the surface is uninhabitable. Unless something catastrophic forced entire populations underground for extended periods. How did they excavate millions of cubic feet of rock without collapsing the structure? How did they calculate the ventilation requirements for 20,000 people? Why does a city this sophisticated appear fully formed in the archaeological record with no obvious developmental stages? What was on the surface that made living 60 meters underground preferable? And what happened to the knowledge that built this? From surviving beneath the earth in Turkey, we moved to a civilization that mastered the surface. A city in the desert with plumbing that wouldn't be matched for 4,000 years. Number 4. Mohenjo-daro, you're walking down a perfectly straight street. The bricks beneath your feet are uniform, standardized to exact ratios. The buildings on either side rise 2, sometimes 3 stories high. Every house has a private bathroom. A flush toilet connected to an underground sewage system that drains into covered municipal channels running beneath the street. The year is 2500 BCE. This is Mohenjo-daro. And it has better plumbing than London would have in 1850 CE. The city was discovered in the 1920s in the Sindh province of modern-day Pakistan, buried beneath centuries of river silt. Archaeologists expected primitive mud huts. They found urban planning that wouldn't be matched until the Roman Empire 2,000 years later. A grid system laid out with geometric precision. Streets running perfectly north-south and east-west. Standardized baked bricks measuring 7x14 x 28 centimeters. A 1:4 ratio used throughout the entire Indus Valley civilization across hundreds of sites spanning 1,500 kilometers. The Great Bath sits at the city's center. A massive public pool, 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, 2.4 meters deep, lined with bitumen to prevent leaks. Steps descend from both ends. Surrounding rooms suggest ritual bathing. The engineering is flawless. The waterproofing still holds after 4,500 years. Every house had a private well, a bathing platform, and a toilet that drained into the city's sewage system. Wastewater flowed through covered brick channels beneath the streets, emptying into larger drains and eventually into cesspits outside the city walls. This wasn't a luxury for the elite. This was standard infrastructure for a population of 40,000 people. But here's what makes no sense. 0 palaces, 0 royal tombs, 0 temples dominating the skyline, 0 weapons of war, 0 fortifications, 0 evidence of a ruling class. The houses are remarkably uniform in size and construction. Some are larger, yes, but not monumentally so. No pharaoh's pyramid, no king's palace, no ziggurat for priests. For over 700 years, from 2500 to 1800 BCE, Mohenjo-daro thrived as one of the largest cities in the ancient world. And it did so without visible hierarchy. No armies, no conquests, no slaves building monuments to god-kings. Just advanced civil engineering, standardized construction, and a society that somehow organized 40,000 people without leaving behind a single statue of a ruler. Mainstream archaeology explains it as gradual decline. Climate change, the Indus River shifted course. Trade networks collapsed. The population slowly dispersed. Peaceful, orderly, unremarkable. But the abandonment was sudden. Houses left intact. No signs of invasion. No mass graves. No fire. The people just walked away. And the river buried it all under silt, preserving the city so perfectly that we can still see the tooth marks on 400-500-year-old bricks where workers bit down to test if the clay was ready for firing. How did they achieve urban organization without kings? What conflict resolution systems replaced armies and police? Why does every other civilization we know require hierarchy, while Mohenjo-daro functioned for 700 years without it? What social technology did they possess that we've lost? And why did they abandon perfection? From a city without rulers in the Indus Valley, we moved to a city that rewrote the entire timeline of Chinese civilization. Number 5. Shimao. You're standing on a hill in northern China, the lowest plateau. Barren, windswept, desolate. Nothing but dust and scrub grass for miles. Local farmers have walked past this hill for generations. Just another natural formation in a landscape full of them. Except it's not a hill. It's a pyramid. A 230-foot stepped stone pyramid. And beneath it, a city covering 400 hectares. A city that was never supposed to exist. This is Shimao. And it just broke 4,000 years of Chinese history. The official timeline is clear. Chinese civilization begins in the Central Plains with the Xia dynasty around 2070 BCE. The first cities, the first writing, the first bronze casting. Everything starts there. The textbooks are unanimous. The archaeological consensus is settled. Civilization flows from the Yellow River heartland outward to the periphery. In 2012, archaeologists recognized what locals had known about for decades. Those hills in the remote northern plateau weren't natural. They were ruins, massive ruins. And when they started excavating, they realized Shimao wasn't just a settlement. It was a superpower. The outer defensive walls stretch for over 2 kilometers, built from massive stone blocks fitted together without mortar. The inner city walls rise 10 meters high in places, still standing after 4,000 years. The main pyramid, terraced in 11 levels, dominates the landscape. Jade artifacts are embedded directly into the stonework, not as decoration, as structural elements. Thousands of pieces of jade carved into intricate designs built into the walls themselves. Carbon dating places construction at 2300 to 1800 BCE, making Shimao contemporary with the supposed dynasty. Except Shimao is 500 kilometers north of the Central Plains, in a region that was supposed to be inhabited by primitive nomads, and it's bigger, more sophisticated, and more violent than anything the Xia dynasty ever built. The violence is undeniable. Tens of thousands of human skulls have been found in the foundation pits, young women mostly, decapitated. Their heads carefully arranged in ritual deposits beneath the walls and gates. This wasn't a peaceful trading hub. This was a militarized state practicing mass human sacrifice on a scale that rivals the Aztecs. Mainstream archaeology scrambles to integrate Shimao into the existing narrative. A regional power, an outlier, important but not central to the development of Chinese civilization. The Central Plains model still holds, they insist, but the physical evidence doesn't fit. Shimao was thriving centuries before the Xia dynasty supposedly unified China. It had monumental architecture, advanced metallurgy, long-distance trade networks bringing jade from hundreds of kilometers away, and a population in the tens of thousands. Then, around 1800 BCE, it was suddenly abandoned. The walls were deliberately dismantled in places. The population dispersed, and the site was forgotten so completely that it became a hill. How does a city this massive disappear from the historical record? Why does it appear fully formed with no developmental stages? If Chinese civilization didn't start in the Central Plains, if it started in the Northern Plateau with a violent, jet-obsessed superpower we only discovered in 2012, what else is missing from the textbooks? How many other first dynasties are actually second or third? And what happened to the people who built this? From a city buried beneath Chinese hills, we leap across the Pacific to an empire swallowed by the jungle. Number 6. El Mirador. You're hacking through jungle. Dense, impenetrable, suffocating jungle in northern Guatemala. The canopy blocks out the sun. Vines thick as your arm hang from trees 150 feet tall. You've been climbing for hours. The ground rises steadily beneath your feet. You're ascending what looks like a natural hill, a mountain rising from the rainforest floor. Except it's not a mountain. It's La Danta, a pyramid. One of the largest pyramids by volume ever built on Earth. And you're standing on top of a city that was supposed to be impossible. This is El Mirador. And it breaks every rule of how civilizations are supposed to develop. The traditional Maya timeline is clear. The pre-classic period, 2000 BCE to 250 CE, was primitive. Small villages, simple pottery, slash-and-burn agriculture. Then comes the classic period, 250 to 900 CS, when the Maya suddenly exploded into greatness. Massive stone cities, hieroglyphic writing, advanced astronomy. Tikal, Palenque, Kapan, the golden age of Maya civilization. El Mirador was built during the pre-classic period, from 1000 BCE to 150 CE. Centuries before the Maya were supposed to be capable of monumental architecture, and it's not smaller than the classic cities. It's bigger, far bigger. La Danta rises 72 meters from the jungle floor. Its base covers 18 acres. The total volume of the pyramid, including its massive platform, is estimated at 2.8 million cubic meters, making it larger by volume than the Great Pyramid of Giza. And La Danta is just one structure in a city that sprawls across 16 square kilometers. The city contains thousands of structures. Temples, palaces, residential complexes, all connected by raised causeways called sac biobe. These limestone roads, some over 40 kilometers long, link El Mirador to surrounding settlements, creating a network of pre-classic cities that archaeologist Richard Hansen calls the Can Kingdom. The causeways are 2 meters high and up to 40 meters wide, paved with white limestone that would have gleamed in the sun, visible for miles through the jungle. The labor required is staggering. Moving millions of tons of limestone, carving it into blocks, hauling it through swamps and rainforest, stacking it into pyramids that rival Egypt. All of this accomplished with stone tools, no metal, no wheels, no pack animals. The Maya didn't have horses. They didn't have oxen. They had human labor and organizational genius. Then, around 150 CE, they walked away. The entire city was abandoned. No invasion, no fire, no mass graves. The population simply dispersed, and the jungle swallowed it whole. For 1,800 years, El Mirador vanished. The pyramids became hills. The causeways became ridges. The city became legend. Mainstream archaeology explains it as environmental collapse. Deforestation, soil depletion, the population outgrew the land's carrying capacity. A cautionary tale of ecological mismanagement. Gradual decline, predictable, but the scale contradicts gradual. You don't build the largest pyramid in the Americas, then forget how. You don't engineer 40-kilometer causeways, then lose the knowledge. The classic Maya built impressive cities, yes, but nothing approaching El Mirador's scale. The pre-classic builders moved more stone, organized more labor, and demonstrated more sophisticated urban planning than their descendants. How does a civilization regress? Why does knowledge disappear? If the Maya peaked in the pre-classic period, then collapsed and rebuilt on a smaller scale, what does that say about the linear model of progress we've been taught? What social collapse erases the ability to move mountains, and how many times has this happened? From moving millions of tons of limestone through the jungle, we leap across the ocean to an even more impossible feat. Moving magnetic basalt onto a coral reef in the middle of the Pacific. Number 7. Nan Madol. You're floating in a canoe off the coast of Pohnpei, Micronesia. The water is crystal clear. Beneath you, a coral reef. Around you, something that shouldn't exist. A network of 92 artificial islands built directly on top of the reef. Stone walls rising from the water. Massive black basalt columns stacked like Lincoln logs, forming temples, tombs, and residential complexes. 750,000 tons of stone. some individual logs weighing 50 tons. All of it transported across open ocean and assembled on a coral reef. This is Nan Madol, and no one can explain how it was built. The site covers 75 hectares of shallow reef and tidal flats. The artificial islets are separated by narrow canals, creating a Venice of the Pacific. The walls are constructed from prismatic basalt columns, hexagonal in cross-sections stacked horizontally and vertically in alternating layers. No mortar, no cement, just precisely fitted stone. The largest structure, Nan Madol, has walls 8 meters high and 5 meters thick. The cornerstones weigh up to 50 tons each. The basalt came from quarries on the main island of Pohnpei across open water. The builders had no pulleys, no levers, no wheels, no metal tools, no pack animals. Just stone tools, wooden rafts, and human labor. Mainstream archaeology dates construction to the 12th and 13th centuries CE, built by the Saudeleur dynasty as a ceremonial and administrative center. The population of Pohnpei at the time was under 30,000 people. To move 750,000 tons of basalt across water, quarry it, transport it, and stack it into walls, you need surplus labor, meaning you need agriculture productive enough to feed workers who aren't farming. You need organizational hierarchy to coordinate the effort. You need engineering knowledge to prevent the structures from sinking into the reef. And you need a reason compelling enough to justify the expenditure of resources. The mainstream explanation is rafting. They floated the stones on wooden rafts at high tide, maneuvered them into position, and stacked them during low tide. Simple, achievable with primitive technology, but the math doesn't work. A 50-ton basalt column requires a raft with enough buoyancy to support the weight plus the weight of the raft itself. Assuming tropical hardwood with a density of 0.7 grams per cubic centimeter, you'd need a raft roughly 10 meters long, 5 meters wide, and 2 meters thick just to float a single stone. Now factor in ocean currents, tidal shifts, and the precision required to position the stone exactly where it needs to go without capsizing. Then repeat this process 750,000 times. The logistics are impossible. The labor requirements are impossible. The engineering precision is impossible. Local legends offer a different explanation. Twin sorcerers Alasipa and Alasopa used magic to fly the stones through the air. The stones floated into place. No rafts, no labor, just levitation. Mainstream archaeology dismisses this as mythology. Primitive people explaining advanced engineering through supernatural means, they say condescendingly. But the legends are consistent across generations, and the engineering remains unexplained. How did a population of 30,000 move 750,000 tons of stone across open water? What naval engineering or construction techniques did they possess that left no trace? Why build a city on a coral reef when solid ground was available on the main island? What technology did they have that we've lost? And why do we dismiss their own explanations as primitive superstition when we can't offer anything better? From ignoring the engineering genius of Pacific Islanders, we move to a civilization whose achievements were deliberately erased by those who couldn't accept the truth. Number 8. Great Zimbabwe. You're standing inside a massive curving wall. Granite blocks, perfectly fitted, rising 32 feet above you. No mortar. No cement. Just stone on stone, held together by precision and gravity. The wall is 20 feet thick at the base. It's been standing for 700 years. And when European explorers first saw it in the 1870s, they refused to believe Africans built it. This is Great Zimbabwe, and its history was deliberately buried by people who couldn't accept the truth. The site covers 1,800 acres in southeastern Zimbabwe. The Great Enclosure, the largest ancient structure south of the Sahara, has walls that stretch 820 feet in circumference. Over 1 million granite blocks quarried from nearby hills, shaped to fit without mortar, stacked with such precision that the walls have survived centuries of weathering, vegetation, and neglect. The conical tower inside the enclosure rises 30 feet solid stone, purpose unknown. Residential complexes, smaller enclosures, and terrace platforms spread across the surrounding hills. Carbon dating and pottery analysis place construction between the 11th and 15th centuries CE. At its peak, Great Zimbabwe housed up to 18,000 people. It was the capital of a vast trading empire controlling gold and ivory routes stretching to the Indian Ocean coast. Archaeologists have found Chinese porcelain, Persian pottery, Arab coins, and glass beads from as far as Indonesia. This wasn't a remote village. This was an economic superpower. But when German explorer Karl Marx arrived in 1871, he looked at the walls and declared they must have been built by the Queen of Sheba, or the Phoenicians, or some lost white civilization. Anyone but the indigenous Shona people, the The stonework was too sophisticated, the engineering too advanced. Africans, he insisted, were incapable of such construction. This wasn't ignorance. This was ideology. This was racism codified as archaeology. The British South Africa Company, which controlled the region, actively suppressed archaeological evidence that contradicted the narrative. In 1902, they hired a journalist named Richard Hall to excavate the site. Hall's method was to remove anything he deemed foreign to the supposed ancient builders. He stripped away over 12 feet of archaeological deposits, destroying centuries of stratified evidence, discarding African artifacts, and keeping only items that could be linked to non-African cultures. The Rhodesian government continued the suppression for decades. Archaeologists who argued for indigenous African construction were dismissed, defunded, or banned from the site. It wasn't until Zimbabwe's independence in 1980 that the truth was officially acknowledged. The Shona people built Great Zimbabwe. No outside influence, no lost white civilization. Just African engineering, African labor, and African genius. The precision is undeniable. The granite blocks are shaped to fit the natural curvature of the walls. No two blocks are identical, yet they lock together so tightly that a knife blade can't fit between them. The walls taper as they rise, distributing weight to prevent collapse. Drainage channels are built into the structure to prevent water damage. This is sophisticated civil engineering executed without metal tools, without wheels, without written plans. How many other African achievements were erased by colonial historians? How many sites were dismissed, destroyed, or deliberately misattributed because the truth threatened European supremacy? If it took 110 years to acknowledge Great Zimbabwe's true builders, what other histories are we still refusing to see? What knowledge was destroyed in the name of maintaining a lie? And how much human genius have we buried under racism? From deliberate erasure by colonial powers, we move to accidental erasure by nature itself, and the cutting-edge technology finally revealing what's been hidden all along. Number 9. Upano Valley. You're in a small plane flying over the Amazon rainforest in eastern Ecuador. Below you, an endless green canopy, impenetrable, untouched, virgin wilderness stretching to the horizon. This is what the Amazon has always been, right? Pristine nature. A few scattered tribes living in harmony with the forest. No cities, no agriculture, no civilization. A laser pulses from the belly of the plane. LiDAR, light detection and ranging. The laser penetrates the canopy, bounces off the ground, and sends back data. The computer processes it. And the screen shows something impossible. Roads. Perfectly straight roads running for dozens of miles. Rectangular platforms arranged in geometric grids. Canals, plazas, thousands of structures hidden beneath the trees. A 500-year-old urban network, home to tens of thousands of people buried under what we thought was untouched wilderness. This is the Upano Valley, and it just rewrote everything we thought we knew about the Amazon. The traditional narrative is clear. The Amazon soil is too poor to support large-scale agriculture. The rainforest is too dense to allow urban development. Pre-Columbian populations were small, scattered, living in temporary settlements. The Amazon was never home to complex civilizations. It couldn't be. The environment wouldn't allow it. In January 2024, a team led by archaeologist Stefan Rostein published findings in the journal Science that obliterated this narrative. Using LiDAR technology, they mapped over 300 square kilometers of the Upano Valley and found over 6,000 earthen platforms, rectangular mounds, each measuring roughly 20 by 10 meters, arranged in clusters connected by a network of straight roads and canals. The roads are the most shocking part. Perfectly straight, some stretching over 20 kilometers, raised causeways cutting through swamps and forests with geometric precision. These aren't footpaths. These are engineered highways designed to move people and goods across a densely populated landscape. The platforms served as foundations for residential and ceremonial structures. Radiocarbon dating places construction between 500 BCE and 600 CE, making the Upano cities contemporary with the Roman Empire. Population estimates suggest 10,000 to 15,000 people lived in the valley at its peak, possibly more. This wasn't a scattering of villages. This was an urban network rivaling anything in Mesoamerica. The agricultural system was equally sophisticated. The inhabitants built raised fields and drainage canals to manage the waterlogged soil. They cultivated maize, beans, and squash on a scale that required surplus production and organized labor. They engineered the landscape, transforming swamps into farmland and forests into cities. Then, around 600 CE, the population collapsed. Not from environmental failure, from disease. When Europeans arrived in the 16th century, they brought smallpox, measles, and influenza. Diseases that swept through indigenous populations with apocalyptic speed. Estimates suggest 90% of the Amazon's population died within a century of contact. The cities were abandoned, the roads overgrown, the jungle reclaimed everything, and we forgot they ever existed. For 400 years, we looked at the Amazon and saw wilderness. We saw nature untouched by human hands. We were wrong. The Amazon was a garden. A densely populated, heavily engineered landscape managed by civilizations we erased and then forgot. Textbooks printed last year are already obsolete. The Amazon wasn't empty. It was full. And if LIDAR can reveal 6,000 structures in 300 square kilometers, what's hiding under the remaining 5.5 million square kilometers of rainforest? How many cities are we missing? How many civilizations did we bury under the myth of pristine wilderness? What else are we wrong about? And how long until we admit the primitive Amazon was more advanced than medieval Europe? From cutting-edge technology revealing lost cities, we return to the ultimate truth these ruins teach us. Number 10. Akrotiri, picture a city frozen in time. Akrotiri, on the Greek island of Santorini, 1600 BCE. You're walking through streets lined with three-story houses. The walls are covered in vibrant frescoes, ships with billowing sails, dolphins leaping through waves, women in elaborate jewelry, scenes of daily life preserved in perfect detail. Every house has indoor plumbing, clay pipes running through the walls, bringing fresh water in and carrying wastewater out, flush toilets connected to a sophisticated sewage system, hot and cold running water, bathtubs. This is Bronze Age Greece, 600 years ago, and the infrastructure is better than most of Europe would have in 1850. The city had paved streets, multi-story buildings with stone foundations and timber frames, and advanced drainage systems beneath every road. Storage jars filled with grain, wine, and olive oil line the warehouses. Pottery imported from Crete, Egypt, and Syria fills the homes. This was a wealthy trading hub, connected to the entire Mediterranean world. Then the volcano erupted. Mount Thera exploded with a force that dwarfed Krakatoa. The eruption buried Akrotiri under 20 feet of volcanic ash in a single day. No time to escape, no time to salvage anything. The city was entombed instantly, preserving everything exactly as it was. For 600 years, it sat beneath the ash, forgotten. Until archaeologists began excavating in 1967. The preservation is so perfect that we can see the wooden furniture, the food still in the storage jars, the tools left on workbenches. We can read the city like a snapshot, and what it shows is undeniable. Bronze Age civilizations had technology, infrastructure, and sophistication that wouldn't be matched for millennia. Akrotiri isn't unique, it's just the best preserved. Troy, Thonis, Derinkuyu, Mohenjo-daro, Shimao, El Mirador, Nan Madol, Great Zimbabwe, the Upano Valley. 10 cities that break the timeline. 10 pieces of evidence that progress isn't linear. History is a circle. We've been here before, so here's your challenge. Which of these 10 cities is the smoking gun? Which one breaks the timeline beyond repair? Defend your choice in the comments. Build your case. Convince me. If this one stayed with you, like and subscribe.